Okay, so I'm following up to Lulu, the Archon spirit doll. The titles are better than the videos. That's why I'm following up, because me making the video, unfortunately, makes me realise that it's the singer, not the song, that is happening when I make a video, unfortunately. That's an old movie called The Singer, Not the Song, and the title says it all. The singer, not the song. In other words, who was this was actually a religious film, strangely enough. The priest in it was trying to reform a very negative, evil-spirited young man. Okay? And he was a very true priest. He believed in God and his religion, and he believed that he could change this essentially negative, evil person into someone that could see the light, shall we say. And it was fool's gold in the movie, but essentially the young, negative, evil man did actually listen to the priest because he liked the priest. There was something so good in the priest that this negative being, this negative, evil human being, was terribly attracted to this essentially very good human being that was a priest. And he played along with the priest in a funny kind of way, half luring him on that there was a possibility, although now that I think of it, perhaps he really didn't, but he was still essentially very attracted and actually admired him greatly. But at any rate, the point is that I've gone off onto the movie. This is not even a movie I'm supposed to be doing a video on. But essentially what I am saying is that a lot of what I put into my videos, the fantasy, which is like a movie, even though, as I say, I believe in fairy tales, I think fairy tales have just as much to offer as a true story. Now, the singer, not the song. See, I'm the singer, and I promote or try to promote my fairy tales and put across my fairy tale. But unfortunately, I'm a poor singer. The song is actually quite good. The fairy tales, when I think of them, and when I'm even reciting stuff from the past, I really think that in better hands, without sounding too as though, past events are that important, they do actually have merit and they are actually interesting. But unfortunately, I get very convoluted when I start talking, and so the singer, yes, in this one it was the other way around. The singer was actually better than the song because there was no way that the priest was going to change the negative, essentially bad young man. It was good versus bad, really, or good versus evil, if you like. And the evil had no intentions of ever being good. It liked being bad, but it still, but the song was not good for the evil or the bad man had no interest in the song of the preacher, had no interest in the religion or being saved or becoming good. But he was very interested in the singer, in the priest. He was fascinated by how good someone could be and how much effort this person was putting into trying to reform or change something negative or bad into something good, or positive, which was, and it was futile too because it was never going to happen. But anyway, that I've gone off onto the thing. But essentially, I'm saying that the opposite with my videos. The song is actually good. The fairy tales are quite good, but the way I put them across, I muddle them all up. That is why I am going to do a remake of Lulu, the Archon Spirit doll. Because, see, there again, I had it just before I was coming in, and then I lose all my train of thought. That's the problem. Because you see, I am not. You see, I'm a human being. I'm a real human being. So, unlike the Lulu Archon Spirit doll, now she was my doll. I was her ventriloquist. So it's a bit hard for me to use Lulu as an example of the Matrix. But essentially, sadly, it is like that. The same way that I gave my spirit, my personality, my ideas, my need to be friendly and outgoing, like that is what happens in the Matrix. The human being essentially gives their spirit to the Archon Matrix God. And then the Archon Matrix God becomes Lulu, the friendly, the pretty, the seductive, the charming, the cute, the doll that I loved. You see, the real humans give their humanness to the Matrix God and to the Matrix Lulu dolls, which are like the demigods of this earth, those that we look up to and we worship. We don't know that we're worshipping and idolizing ourselves. They, like Lulu, do not exist without me or you. Lulu had no life really. Lulu was a piece of plastic, but I infused her with spirit and with life. The only difference is that when I infused Lulu with my spirit and life, like a ventriloquist does with the dummy, I had full control over Lulu. Lulu was in sync with me. Lulu was my doll. I held her in my hand. She was that big. She made me feel happy because obviously she fulfilled a childhood friend need at the time. You know what I mean? So that was the real purpose at the time. But because I felt kind of loved, I suppose, I'm guessing this now, so it's just coming to me now. I'm guessing that because I put myself into Lulu and it was kind of like a self-love, except that Lulu was separate to me because I held her in my hand, so I didn't feel lonely. It was like having a friend. Am I making any sense here? And therefore I felt complete, and that was why that moment on the beach, on the holidays, also being, in sync with that beach and that surroundings, although I didn't place that at the time, and with Lulu, a complete wholeness in my own being and complete contentment, complete at ease and, like I say, wholeness with yourself. And yet it was really nothing because it was just me and the beach and a piece of plastic because I really did not need Lulu. But at the time I did because I was a child and I did not get, I didn't feel complete and love from the world around me, So obviously I didn't need too much because I was able to make Lulu. So it really was about self-love, I suppose, self-acceptance of just saying, hey, I'm really okay. I'm really very good, in fact, more than okay, because the ecstasy and the peace and the contentment in that moment, I think most people would, if they had felt it, as I can still remember it, it was very spiritual. It was like how you are meant to feel all the time. Because nothing bothered me. I felt so very good. And needed nothing else. But at any rate, I'm going off the track again. But you see, that was okay to do that with Lulu, because Lulu was under my control. I was infusing Lulu, and really she didn't really exist. It was really just me trying to make a contentment in myself. And because I had bought Lulu with my pocket money instead of buying my usual lollies and stuff, it was my choice. It was mine. It was just like a little extension of myself. But the Matrix is much different to that. And Lulu was not destructive. Lulu brought me into peace with myself, because it was just my little fantasy. It was my fantasy and mine alone. I had full control over it. No one else had any control over it. It had nothing to do with even any other human being, Although it probably did send out good vibrations at the time, and that was why subsequently, not long after, Lulu was taken from me. I only had this Lulu spirit doll, Archon spirit doll, I say, because you shouldn't need it. And also it was given to me by the Archons, because we live in a matrix even then. So I didn't just happen into that shop and just happen onto that table with all the remnants that were thrown out for $1, because I only had $1, because it was pocket money for the holiday. And I didn't just happen on that table where there was all this stuff thrown on the cheap table and Lulu was sitting in amongst it. No, of course not. Lulu was a setup of the Matrix for me, because yes, it showed me ecstasy and peace for a moment of how I should be, but it didn't like that. So very quickly afterwards, it took Lulu from me. I had to leave Lulu in the place, because this was on a holiday, see, and I lost her, and I had to leave and come back to Sydney, where I am now, and leave Lulu behind. And I even had an idea where she was, but I was not allowed to get her. And of course I, gave the Matrix, like I have on many occasions and even recently, full negative energy. Even for a child, I can remember I was a reserved child. Remember that? I said that in the previous video. People, even when I grew up, someone once said, she's very reserved, because they see you doing some nice things sometimes, they think, oh, she must be very friendly and very kindly. But then when they actually spoke to me, they'd say, oh, she's very reserved. In other words, I'm not really very friendly. But that wasn't because I was friendly. It's just because it's like you've not been used to, you're not socialised. I was not very socialised. If you're antisocial, you don't become socialised, so you might like people, but you are frightened to talk to them. And in fact, the only reason I make these videos now, I'm still a bit like that. In fact, probably quite a lot like it. But desperate times call for desperate measures. I've got nothing to lose now. I no longer fear if people laugh. Well, I got over that a few years ago anyway. I was like, hey, as long as I can just exist. But the point is that if you start to, like I am not social with people, as I say, but if you, it's like I might not like every animal on the earth. In other words, I do like all of nature and all of animals, sure, but maybe a crocodile I wouldn't want to have swimming right next to me, you know what I mean? So some animals are not really your favourites, but I still consider it all life, so I think none is less than another. But humans would have been right down the bottom on my list, because not because I thought they were negative, but merely because I personally was too frightened to talk to them or to have too much to do with them. And whenever I did, I always encountered narcissists and psychopaths, so naturally that didn't exactly reinforce my confidence that way, although I did know that it was a minority. But unfortunately, recently I found out that also was not true. Just when I thought, hey, now I can relax with people because I know that there are some that are negative, but they're a minority, so it's okay. But of course, that is not the case either. It is the vast majority. So, as usual, the matrix gets you. But either way, where was I? Jeez. Yeah, I gave the matrix that night after I lost Lulu and knew that I was going to be made to go home in the morning. So I had to leave Lulu thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away. And so the matrix got full, like I say, I was a reserve child. So for me to carry on hysterically and cry and like I can still remember the scene. And the funny thing is, I put on the greatest scene, but it was all genuine. It wasn't false. It was like I just could not help but just be overwhelmed and scream and thought, someone's got to help me. Someone's got to get my Lulu back. But instead, everyone completely ignored me. It was almost as though they knew, which I subsequently found out, that even then I didn't think it was a matrix. But everyone did know where Lulu was. They had taken her to feed the matrix. They didn't know they were feeding the matrix. They were feeding themselves because they were psychopathic narcissists. So they enjoyed my suffering at the loss, and they knew where Lulu was, and they had taken Lulu from me because I had just left her on the side of a pool for 5 minutes while I probably went for a little dip, because I took Lulu everywhere. Like I took her, she was with me all the time. When we went to the swimming pool, to the beach, like I say, that moment of ecstasy was her on the beach, but I didn't take her in the water, when I went in for the swim, so I had to leave her on the side, and when I come out, she was gone, Anyway, it's such a sad story, isn't it? It's funny that I could probably laugh about it now. But and like I say, I understand it now. I understand it now. But the Matrix, yes, set that up as well. Even back then, that's like 50 years ago. I was probably 9 years old or something. Something like that. Now, yeah, the Matrix is not like where you infuse your spirit, or you're like a ventriloquist. That's right, where you have control and you can put the dummy down, and it's only you that's benefiting from it. You might use it like most people use a ventriloquist doll to express themselves. I used Lulu to express myself, because I was reserved and thought that I was not going to, because my own experience at the time had been that if I went up to people and said hello, they would think that was forward or silly, whereas because I could use a cute little doll, it wasn't really me, even though it was me. The same as a ventriloquist uses a dummy. You notice how often ventriloquists will express their inner self through a dummy. And sometimes you'll notice that usually it's comedy and it's usually a bit dark or a bit naughty. Whereas with Lulu, I was using her to express a friendliness. So I would just go up to people with the doll and put the doll in the face of the person and say, "Hello, my name's Lulu. What's yours?" And Actually, Lulu didn't get very good responses because, you see, I couldn't understand that because I thought Lulu was so cute, you know. But strangely enough, a lot of people actually found Lulu irritating, and that's why they got rid of her, because they didn't want poor little Lulu or me to be happy, you know. And it was. I can't believe I'm laughing. This is probably the first time I've smiled or laughed for about, you know, probably only a few times over the last 2.5 years, to be quite frank. And actually, I do like to laugh, you know, because I think that, you know, the old saying, even, you know, the situation is hopeless but not serious. And that is the wonderful thing about a human being, which actually I didn't realise. How only human beings are able to do that, to actually laugh at even their own adversity. And this is not always a good thing, though, because the Matrix laughs hard too. The Matrix God loves to make you laugh at really bad adversity or negative things too, so you do have to be careful. Most of what is from the Matrix is from us, but regurgitated to where we laugh. Yes, most comedy is laughing at tragedy. And most comedy is admiring, even I've noticed that myself in recent times when I used to watch TV shows particularly. And I've watched them over and over and really thought they were wonderful. Watched some episodes 10, 20 times, as a lot of people have. These shows are very negative because whilst they are funny, they do reflect the Matrix. Because usually the people in them are not real human. And by that I mean they are real human in the sense that they are fallible, as humans are, and have faults as humans are, but often the faults tend to be glorified. It tends to be how the Matrix wants to turn humans round into a reverse of what they are. Because we live in a reverse world. Everything is inverted. Everything. Everything is now becoming and has become the opposite to what it originally was or should be a benefit to the real human. But of course, remember, the Matrix is not real human. The Matrix God is not human. The Matrix God is a technological being. The Matrix God and his earth is not a natural human earth. Real humans, those that are in amongst it, actually think that it is. They think it's still a real natural earth with a bit of technology thrown in. In reality, it is the complete reverse. It is a total technological domain, completely covered by technology, ruled by it, mentally, physically, psychologically, and every other way, with a little bit of nature thrown in. That is because humans keep the nature alive. The tragedy, though, of course, is that, I say tragedy because it only just occurred to me, it is kind of a tragedy because the real humans that, like myself, still believe that we should only have everything natural, they actually are contributing, a lot of them, to the chaos more than even the Archon Matrix, because they like nature and they believe it's a natural world. They will carry on a lot about nature, but they don't realise how nature works, and they don't realise they're in a matrix. So they're kind of it's very futile what they're doing. And it's negative too, because they will be directed by the Matrix to turn against other real humans, even in the name of nature or good. This is the paradox. Is that the word, the one I used that I looked up the other day for the previous video? The contradiction, the irony. Yeah. And the tragedy, in my opinion, because to be fighting and waging a war in the name of good or in the name of nature, but to be futile and to actually probably only being negative against those that are your friends, shall we say, is the joke of the Matrix as usual. And the Matrix laughs very hard. And humans, I suppose, are supposed to know these things. It's a bit like, I say, the paradox of that religion, where if your religion says you shouldn't kill, but then you kill in the name of your religion or in the name of your God, to protect your God, to protect your religion, you're not following your own religion. You're not following the word of your own deity or God or whatever. That's a paradox, you see. I said that in the other video. And this is what happens all the time in the Matrix. Everything is a paradox. I hope I'm making more sense in this one. But anyway, back to Lulu, the spirit Archon doll. I say Archon doll because she was given to me by the Matrix. And Lulu is a representation of what happens in the real world. That's assuming anything is real, which it actually isn't, but at the same time it still is. It's a video game, but we're playing in it. And it's real in many ways, even though it's not real in the sense that it is a game and it's set up and all that sort of stuff, of course. But it's still real at our level. At any rate, Lulu is, when I gave my ideas, my spirit, my thought to Lulu, that was okay because I was the ventriloquist and she was the ventriloquist doll. I had full control over it. But in the Matrix, it's the other way around. You're giving to Lulu, your ventriloquist doll is the Archon, Matrix God's disciples, his demigods. He's the God, and his representations on this earth are those that we love and admire, just as I loved Lulu, or thought I loved Lulu. Lulu became my self-love, but the other is not self-love. The other is not going to benefit me. I am idolising something that is separate from myself, because when I give my spirit, my thoughts and my ideas to the Matrix God, and then that is given by the technology. The Matrix is like all technology. It's like when you give to a computer or to a system, you're feeding that system, and that's what it is. It's a mind system, a technological mind system to get your thoughts, get your humanity, because the Matrix lacks humanity. The Matrix is technology. The Matrix God is technology. His disciples and minions are of the technological variety, in the sense that that is their means of communication. They're not communicating like humans, like I say, we're spiritual beings, our thought creates reality and we're all connected. They're connected by this technological spiritual network. Some of them think that it is a spiritual thing because they want the spirit of the human. They want that. They need that. They like that, because then when you give to your demigods, your thoughts are given to the disciples of the Matrix, and they are your those that you admire, those you love, those you worship, those are your idols or your icons, and you see them as better than yourself, or at least you admire them greatly, and you do bow down and worship them. You give them your time, you give them your energy, you give them your admiration, you give them your attention. You never at any stage, you say, I relate to that. And the reason you relate to it is because the humanity part of those demigods comes from the human. If they did not get the humanity and the feelings and the emotions and that psychological side from the humans, you would not admire them. No matter how talented or intelligent they were, you probably wouldn't. It's that combination that gets you in. It's a bit like when, the singer or the song, but either way, the singer and the song, we'll talk about singers and songs here. The singer you will relate to because the song touches your emotions and your heart, if you want to look at it that way. The heart is merely the emotions or the feelings, okay? And if I get these things wrong, please don't hold it against me. I have to use words and I don't fully know what I'm talking about most of the time, as I've often said, and this is the truth. I clutch at straws. I believe my own fantasies. I feel I'm onto something, and I know in myself that there is, I believe the fairy tales. I believe the ideas, and I think they have merit. I see them in my own reality and in my past too, as I say, but it's piecing it together now and seeing it in a different light. Even though I still see Lulu in the same light. And this just occurred to me right now that human beings' thought creates reality. So theoretically speaking, I should be able to bring Lulu back into existence now after 60 years. I should be able to. But, I'm not sure how I would do that. Now, I'm sure there is a Lulu in the world, even at a physical level, somewhere, and the whole point would be to bring it back. That would only be to prove what I say. Just if there's anyone listening that doesn't go for this, because I would think that a lot of people probably wouldn't, but maybe the people that listen to me probably do. So it's not essential for me to. But I've said this, like even for those that are skeptical about the thought of the human being actually creating reality, the only way you can do that is to try to prove it to yourself. But like I say, you must remember that, yes, the Matrix will be up against that because we are not natural humans living in a natural environment. So, of course, what should have been and what really is not operating now. So there will be, there will be a lot of opposition to that. But also, I would say, and this is just my own fantasy once again, that, see, when I say humans create reality, and there again, this would probably vary, but this is only because we're limited, I would think. But even at a limited level, some people have different abilities. The Matrix knows this. The Matrix harnesses whatever ability you have left. And also the Matrix harnesses much more because the Matrix has access to your full mind, whereas we don't have access to our full mind, I would think. I said that in the previous video that I would think that the Matrix has access to the subconscious and, of course, to the conscious mind, but we give the conscious mind consciously ourselves now to the Matrix. Every time you do something like, like consciously, and you do it like in a physical way, like I'm talking right now, so I'm giving to the Matrix. Well, of course, I'm giving to the Matrix because if you make a video, you're giving directly to technology. You're actually conscious of that. But you're also giving to the invisible Matrix, the technology that takes much, much more. Because the Matrix, God, has always been able to read humans' minds because it's its domain, and it, has. While we have been pushed into a box almost, a closed box, we're like put into a little box, with hardly any holes to see out, and we're told that box is what we are in the world. The Matrix and the God, it's been, becoming aware of everything and utilises everything that is human too. So it how should I explain it? I'm not doing this very well. But see, the matrix, the God, right? The God entity, because we'll just focus on the God entity as opposed to the minions and the demigods, because the demigods are like the representations of the God on this earth, because as I said in the other video, the God doesn't show itself in its form on the earth, but we worship the God indirectly through its disciples, which are those that we admire, those that we put into power in this real world, those that we give our admiration to in this real world, whether it be an actor, a musician, a writer, anyone at all, or anyone that is anyone or anything is of the matrix. That's the representations of the God entity for us, so that we worship the God entity indirectly through them. In other words, we don't know we're worshipping the God entity. Some people do. Some people worship directly and are aware that these are representations and that they show the character of the God entity. They show the character of the God entity and its ideas and beliefs, etc. But it is a reverse world, and it's a confused world, and it's a mind game world. So if we didn't give, if there wasn't humanity attached to these idols and icons and demigods and those that we admire, we would not relate to them. We would not see them that way, because humans do like the human. They don't like just the piece of plastic. They don't like just Lulu, the Archon doll. They like Lulu, the spirit Archon doll. They don't like Lulu, the Archon doll, just the very basic, pretty doll that was just plastic but very pretty and very cute. They like myself only when Lulu becomes the Archon spirit doll, when I put my spirit, my feelings, my personality into the doll. Because the Archon disciples, minions, demigods, those we admire, they are Lulu without spirit, really. But we give to the matrix God, and the matrix God, or the matrix system, machine technology, because it's technology, it's spirit technology. That's a dangerous thing too. It's another thing too. See, they want to, the Archon God wants to have his gods as spiritual, technical beings, if you want to look at it that way. That's the best I can describe it. Or spirit Archon dolls. Archon is the technology. Archon is a different being. It's a negative being. It's a technical being. It is different to the human being. But it likes to, but it is like the, it is like the psychopath in the sense that, and like, dare I say, I go back to the scorpion and the frog. And I'm going to confuse you and myself here, and I'm sorry, but it's a bit like the frog was the human, the scorpion is the Archon God, okay, or the Archon minion or disciple of the God. The frog is a dear little human being, a kindly little spirit. It knows, though, because it's not stupid, it's intelligent. It knows that the scorpion stings and kills, but it is still convinced by the scorpion, who plays on the feelings and the emotions of the human or the frog, and convinces the frog to do favours for him, to give to him as we give to the matrix, and we give to our those we admire, and that we don't know we're giving them the spirit. We don't know that we're doing that. Sometimes we do. When we give to the internet, we know that. But we think they're the same as us. But they're the demigods. But they're not spirit unless we give them the spirit. Whereas we assume they are a god with a spirit, so we think they're better than us. But actually, without us, they have no spirit. Then they are just Lulu, the Archon doll. They are just the scorpion. But the scorpion is able to convince the frog or the human that it is a spiritual being. And so then we see it as superior because we say it's a technical spiritual being. But it's only spiritual because it gets the spirit from us. And it's a dead spirit. It's a stolen spirit. It's a second-hand spirit. But it's very convincing because it has vast experience, vast intelligence, and vast knowledge and awareness that humans don't have. And it uses every trick, every ability that it has, like the scorpion, to convince the human or the frog to take it across to the other side of the bank. Of course, underneath all this, its intentions is still the same. It will sting the human. Because, like in the old parable, it can't help it. You know, please take me across to the other side. Why would I hurt you? You're doing me a favour. I should like you, should thank you, should appreciate. Okay, says the little frog, I'll take you. I should be a bit suspicious. You do look a little bit devious, but no, why would you? That's right. No, I'll trust you. I'll help you. Halfway across, sting. Why? Can't help it, says the scorpion. I cannot help it. It is in my nature. It's what I wanted to do all along. Sure, I think you're a cute little frog. Sure, I can see you're a nice little human. Sure, I envy you. I envy the fact that you're such a little goody human being. And I see you are good. I'm almost a bit touched by it, but I also can't stand it. I'm a scorpion. My sole purpose, my sole reason for being is to destroy you. That's why I've got the stinger. That's my mission in this world. That is my destiny. That is my essence of being. But I enjoy playing the game with you so much. I enjoy the game so much. I'm like a cat that toys with the mouse for, a long time before it actually kills it. Because it enjoys the game and the slow process of seeing the mouse suffer and try to get away, and all the tricks that the mouse will do to try to survive. It enjoys that almost more than the moment of actually just killing the mouse. Because if the cat just wanted the mouse just for food, why does it toy with it so long and play with it? Why doesn't it just kill it and eat it? It's even holding back its own hunger for savouring. It's like savouring the kill, as some hunters do. They don't really want the animal. They just enjoy the process of killing. And the Matrix, God and the Matrix takes everything from that is human, emulates everything that is human, simulates everything that is human, incorporates into itself everything that is human. And then it does this and then reverses it all round in order to change the human being and to turn the human being into what it is. A bit like the singer, not the song. You know, the bad, evil man versus the good priest. Strangely enough, in the movie, we actually like the evil bad man because he's not all bad. He's just cannot help it. He just enjoys it. He likes the priest. He doesn't dislike the priest, but he's got no intentions of ever changing. He can't change. This is the best of the Matrix, by the way, because at the essence of it, the Matrix, God, entity, is anti-life, anti-human life, because it is like the scorpion. It doesn't really like the frog. The frog is something different that the Matrix sees as alien to itself, and also it sees it as something that that can, of course, has the potential to change the Matrix too, and to it is like good versus evil in a way, good versus bad or whatever. But the Matrix, God, entity, and its minions want a technical spiritual being because that is what they are, but it is not spiritual really at all. That is kind of like the illusion of it. The illusion, you can't have technology and spirituality. Now, many people might differ on this view, because I live in my own little fantasy natural world. And I believe that, in my fantasy world, humans are connected to nature. And also I think that nature benefits humans, but there's very little of it now. But the thing is that, and also I think that humans have much more creativity associated with nature, whereas humans have no creativity or the ability for their thought to create the thinking or the world or the reality or to manipulate the reality in any way through technology. This is the world of the Matrix God and its entities. Their thought creates reality through technology. Ours does not. Ours creates technology only through the natural. Technology is a different means for us to create and a different means for us to think and to communicate, even all this sort of stuff. No, it is actually the reverse, and that's why I say it's a reverse world, because it is an anti-human reverse world. It's an anti-life world, because technology is anti-life, and it is the means of the Matrix, and the Matrix God and its minions and disciples. That is their spirituality. That is their thought creating reality, and they create the reality they want, and that is a reverse world. It is where they want to create their beings, their reality, and they have, because it's their Matrix now, and for all I know has been for quite a long time. I don't know these things. Those of you that know more that way or have ideas that way, that is good, and I think I would like to know more, but I don't. But I still hang on to my basic fantasy and my basic fairy tales because, they are unshakable to me, even though I may get a hell of a lot wrong. And like I say, it's all a fantasy. It's all how I want to see things or how I do see things. It may or may not be your reality, because I myself, like I say, with Lulu, the spirit Archon doll, it's the same thing. Like, I also can, like, if you hold to a different way of looking at reality, to where you say, well, it's all technical anyway, so therefore it's okay to merge the spirit with the technology. It's okay to merge nature with technology. It's okay to do all these things. I just say, hey, at a basic level, for a real human being, it is not, and it's not a benefit. It is all negative. But we are immersed in it, as I've said. We are in an artificial domain, but we're not meant to be, because it doesn't benefit us. It benefits the Matrix, its minions, its gods that we now worship. Now, many people will say, hey, they might say, hey, I don't care for being a human being. I don't think humans' thought creates reality. I don't think humans have any power. I don't think humans control that the world revolves around the human. I don't think they control the Matrix. I think the technology and our gods that we worship control the Matrix. And they do. But without the human is the life force of the Matrix. But it's like, I suppose it's kind of bizarre in a way, but it's a bit like saying, the gods, depending, we're talking about gods here. Let's just say some have said that in the past, some context of you are all gods. That is to humans, though. That's interesting, because that implies, and I don't know where this come from, but that implies, that's right, that the human is the centre of the universe, or this matrix even, but it, has been taken over by technology and the technological gods, the technological beings, because they have become that way. They are spiritual, technological beings. And when I say that, that sounds confusing, as I say, but it's essentially they want to be spiritual, but they want to use technology. The two don't mix, but it mixes for them because that's just a word. They're using the technology to create its own species that are very appealing to humans, very seducing to humans, very attractive to humans, and appear to be more human than human. But like I say, this is it. It is not all it appears, though. It is like me giving Lulu, the Archon doll, my spirit, my personality, and then giving Lulu all the credit. As much as I liked Lulu, loved Lulu, when but that was my deception. But that was understandable because I was a child and I was lonely and wanted, something to express myself. But it was a deception and an illusion, because it's like having an imaginary friend that doesn't exist. It's an extension of yourself. You are Lulu, really. It's just that I suppose that's right. Particularly now, if I look at myself, I would have to say, what do I represent? Like when you were a child, I would have been quite content with myself, as I said, if you hadn't been in the Matrix, and living in this, even back then the world was more natural, I would say. It's gone, we certainly didn't have all, but it was still a Matrix, and you're still surrounded by negative people. When I say negative, they're negative to you because they are not feeling people. And they don't have that capacity, whereas most normal human beings, babies even, they have a need for those feelings and that acceptance of what they are. You know, they want that. But this world doesn't accept humans for what they are. And so then humans become they alienate themselves. You know, I've alienated myself. In other words, you start to dislike what you actually are. And that's a mistake. And even like I say, the Lulu doll should not have been necessary. It's okay. I think it's okay. I think it's actually good for children to play with inanimate objects and to use that. I actually do, especially today. But it shouldn't be really necessary. But I think it is still much better than playing with technology, infinitely better, because like I say, I had control over Lulu. I wasn't going onto a computer where the computer is taking as much from me. But of course I was in the Matrix back then, so of course, yes, the emotions, the loss of Lulu and putting my energy and effort into Lulu, putting the love in and then having it taken away, the usual giving to the Matrix and then the usual rejection, the slap on the face and the negativity that ensues, the negative energy brings the vibration down, etc., etc., which certainly I didn't understand then, and even now it's still boggling to me, But like I say, it's good for children, I think, to play with things that aren't technological, that don't have too much life, because then they can infuse their own personality in life. That is actually not a bad thing. It shouldn't be necessary in a way, but it's actually a positive thing, I would say, in comparison with giving to technology, which will consume and eat it up, and it will not be yours. It will be taken by that Lulu doll, the minions, the disciples. They will take what is the best of you and use it to make them the best. So they will then project back to you, hey, look, whatever you have was good, but we will turn it into something better, and then you will love us just as I love Lulu, the Archon spirit doll. That's putting it thing. She was really just a doll. I'm just saying Archon doll because it's given by the Matrix and because the Matrix controls everything. I say spirit doll because I gave the doll life. Without me, the doll was nothing. It wasn't a single being on its own. And the Matrix is a bit like that in some ways. The beings that are the Matrix, the human beings that are the Matrix, the Archon Matrix humans, those that are for the Matrix, because there are different humans in that respect, because if you work for the Matrix, you're an Archon Matrix human. You look like a human, but you're really for the technology, and you have a different belief system, and you're not a single entity. You combined with all the others. You know how I said human beings are all connected? Well, they combine for their technological so-called spirituality. It's very hard to explain, and I certainly don't understand it, and I don't understand these kind of denominations or whatever they are. But they essentially. But I put it very simply that that's really all it is. It is. But the Matrix Archon demigods, but they are our gods for some. But also others still worship other gods. In other words, the gods of the Matrix, but they think they are like supernatural creator gods. Of course, as I said before, humans create reality, so they have the true creative spark in them. I don't know how to explain this. I've got to use words, and it's just what they are, as I've said before, but the Matrix Archon demigods, they don't have that. They get that from the human. They emulate the human. They copy the human. They mimic the human. They're like the ventriloquist dummy, and they do it better than what the humans do because they're given the world stage and they are given all the regalia. They are like Lulu with the little blonde hair and the big blue eyes, and they have different images and different personas that entice and beguile us, as does the Matrix God. And as the Matrix God did do, and I assume did do in my fantasy original tale, which I'm taking from fantasy history, or some people might think it's real history, I don't know. But either way, I just incorporate these things in. But at the same time, at a basic kind of level, I hold on to that fairy tale and that idea. But I don't understand enough about the names of things. I don't understand the full history because I don't know how things have been since the beginning of time, the creation to now. And most people probably don't either. That's probably true. But the Matrix God does, and its minions know much, much more about all these things. But they are a different species, you could say. So they've chosen to be a different type of species. They've elevated themselves and they control the Matrix and the humans. And they know that the humans are the essence of the Matrix and the heart of the Matrix, literally in every way. But they are still a commodity. We are still a commodity to the Matrix, because it's a bit like almost saying a God has, theoretically, I suppose in my fantasy world, why couldn't you have because we live in a reverse world, so that really means that the gods do not rule. The true gods do not rule. The true gods are subordinated. Is that the word? They are merely the life force of something that they have no control over now, and they are merely the life force of a world that is not theirs, a life force of a world that they have no real dominion over. And in fact, it is the complete reverse, because the demigods are ruling and have taken over the true life force God, if you want to look at it that way. That's in the fantasy realm, because I say that because does it not make sense if the Matrix cannot function without the human? Surely the human is the main component of the Matrix, and yet the human is just that life force is regarded as just food for the Matrix, food for the gods. It's not regarded. It's not worshipped. In fact, the gods worship false gods, or lesser gods, if you want to look at it that way. They've took a shine as, like I mentioned, the Garden of Eden scenario, even though I don't understand it, but Eve took a shine to a lesser being, in the sense that it wasn't of her species, it wasn't human, it wasn't fully human, but she took a great shine to it. It enticed. It was like saying, hey, I know that you're not my kind, and I know I shouldn't, but and I know I've got a lovely Adam here, but you've just totally enticed me, because it's just because it just had more information, more and because it's solely focused on that. It's like I say, the psychopath is less than its victims, but it can often totally enslave, entice, and ultimately destroy that which is superior to it, because it focuses 100% on that human being and does everything in its power to entice, to get that human to follow it. It's the same thing. It might sound strange, but at the same time, we see it all the time. Haven't you ever been in a relationship where at first you think the other person is miles better than you, only to discover that they're a lot less, but they've certainly made you believe the opposite? That's because we're in a matrix, so we don't, like I say, I have never experienced that moment of contentment and completeness that I experienced on that beach when I was a child with the Lulu doll, ever since. But that's how it's meant to be. And if you kept that peace and that completeness just in yourself all the time, you would have no need of a Lulu doll. But you could have one if you wanted. In other words, you could associate with other people. You could have other friends. You could have, which you should, and you can associate with other human beings because it's interesting, it's fun, and it is interesting to share that. It's good. It's humans like that. That's why we had Adam and Eve. That's why Eve was given to Adam. Because Adam had, as I said, all the animals and all the world. He probably was quite content. He should have been anyway. If he was at full potential. But it was still interesting, and it was something nice for him to have his own species to share with and to, you know, you know what I'm saying, to have a friend or to have a mate or whatever. But it wasn't necessary. It wasn't there to make him complete necessarily. But of course there was. I would imagine there was. This was also about. Like a mate is for the to make more of your race too. If you want to stay with a limited number, then you don't have to breed or to make more. So that's another thing too. But that's another purpose, you see. But either way, I've gone off the track and not making any sense at all. That's completely irrelevant, really. But have I made the full point here? I've gone off the track again. I apologise for that. Goodness gracious. So what I'm saying is that, yes, you shouldn't need that, and a human being doesn't. But if you think you do, if you are in the matrix and you don't know, what you are, and also even if you are just like I say, if you don't feel that you are receiving from the outside world acceptance, then sometimes you won't accept yourself either. Does that make any sense? That's certainly what I think happened to myself and what happens to a lot of people, I would think. But because, like I say, but either way, it is a reverse world. And like I said before, like right now, I'm talking into the thing. And like Lulu was a representation of me even then. But actually then I was not dissatisfied with myself, because otherwise that moment wouldn't have happened. It still took many more years to create the dissatisfaction, because some spiritual beings will be transformed into dissatisfaction very early in life. Some it takes longer, depending on the person's environment, personality, how affected they are by the Archon, mind parasites, the matrix, the environment, etc. They're all one in the same thing in a funny kind of way, but even that is hard to get your head around and to comprehend. I realise that, because it's the same for me. It's just that because I now just say everything is the matrix, and because I keep it very simple, it makes it much clearer to just then realise that in every circumstance. It doesn't make it easier. In fact, it actually makes it harder to deal with, because you do feel powerless. Whereas even in our delusionary world, and I know you say it's the other way around because I'm in the fantasy world and the real world is the real world and my world is the delusion world. But look, if either way, it's just interesting conversation. So take it as a grain of salt if you're not of this mindset or thinking this way about a human being. you know. And like I say, it's a very strange world that we live in now because, you know, we do have this situation where many people think that even spirituality can be part of the matrix. And actually, spirituality can never be part of the matrix. In my way of looking at things, in my fantasy way, in this fairyland world that I live in, the matrix can never be spirituality. But it presents spirituality to us because it mimics the humans and takes the spirituality from the human and regurgitates it back through its minions and its disciples and its gods. And its gods are those that I've worshipped for a lifetime, and many of you probably would have too. Those that you admire, those that you think have more talent than you, those that you think are authentic and original, when they are actually not. They are a composite. They're a composite of the best humans put into a artificial false god that we then worship. Bit like me loving Lulu. In a way, it was a kind of worship of myself, though, so at least I now say, hey, it wasn't a bad thing for a child. But if I do it with another human being that appears to be different, but still has some characteristics of humanity, like myself, then that becomes very complicated and very hard. Then you will totally worship that as an idol, you know. But either way, as a child, you go very much into fairyland. So obviously Lulu did become real to me, you know what I mean? But she wasn't. She was not real at all. You know, she was technological, 100%. Plastic is technology. It's artificial. She wasn't a living, organic human being. But even that can be deceptive too, because I don't understand the workings of this world, as you can imagine, 100% at all. And that's where it does get even more fairyland and tricky if you're trying to figure it out. And you may or may not get it right. I know I get lots of things wrong, and I haven't changed a lot of what I thought at the start, but I have. Well, like for instance, and once again, these videos, like I say, it's definitely the singer, not the song. But in my case, it's definitely the song, but the singer is very bad. In other words, I'm the interpreter of what I'm trying to, the fairy tale I'm trying to tell, but I'm not a good storyteller. And for that, I could do better if I was under different circumstances. But you see, I'm not of the Matrix. See, the Matrix gods and its entities and its disciples and its stars, shall we say, which are what we admire. Anyone who's anyone in this world is a god or star of the Matrix or a demigod of the Matrix that we follow, watch, admire, listen to, believe, worship, if you want to look at it that way, in different degrees. Different people will have different degrees with different people, how much they worship, how much they like, how much they believe, etc. But essentially there's one for everyone, because humans are the centre of the Matrix. So it does revolve around the human. So they'll have to give you some Lulu, But essentially the God entity, I was just going to add this, in the past, before I went more into all of this, because I had to, because like I say, if you're in the Matrix and the Matrix is all around you and it's completely exposed, And it's like full on, as if to say, look, yes, you're the frog and I'm the scorpion, but, I'm not pretending to be the good scorpion anymore. I am the scorpion. I will sting you. That's when the matrix exposes itself. That's when the God entity and the whole thing opens up to where you see the scorpions, the frogs, etc., etc. And actually, you don't see all the frogs, but you certainly see many scorpions. In other words, then you realise that, not every human is positive. There are many that are negative and are the minions of the matrix. Because the matrix God essentially is a different species. It's a different type of being. And it's anti-life for the human being. It's not anti-life for itself. It's anti-life for the human being. It doesn't like human beings really, because they're intelligent enough to realise that different species don't mix. Human beings don't get that. They think, because that's part of all this universal consciousness ideology, I would imagine. I'm trying to be smart here myself, and I don't know what I'm talking about. But that is also, that can be a fantasy, because that is the matrix really. To actually think that yes, we are all one. But, how can we be all one if we are all, I was going to say all different, but we're not all different. I'm saying that if you have different species, one species should be all one with itself and another one should be all one with itself. They're not meant to meet. They can meet, but if they do, it will be annihilation for one, especially if the matrix is a negative entity that is a scorpion that doesn't like the frog, doesn't like the human. The frog and the human is trusting and simplistic and innocent that way. That's right, like the frog, will be tempted to take the scorpion across the river, thinking that maybe the scorpion, even though he's powerful and very impressive, why would he? He can be my friend. We can be friends eventually. This is not going to happen because the scorpion's nature cannot change and does not want to change and does not want to like the frog. The frog is just a commodity. The frog is useful to it as the human is useful to the matrix. It doesn't matter whether the frog is better than the scorpion. As a being, I would say the frog is the better being. The frog is the superior animal, being, whatever. The scorpion is not, but the scorpion has more power. The scorpion can kill the frog, can sting the frog. The frog cannot kill the scorpion. All he can do is avoid the scorpion, if possible, because the frog is out of its domain. It's meant to be with other frogs, creating a frog world, not creating a scorpion world. I'm not making sense here. But either way, like I say, the God entity, I said in a more distant video, I said I sense that the God entity as a being is essentially of a masculine force, a god of war. I think there was Mars, god of war or something. See, I know none of those things, but I'll just throw it in because you might be able to piece more together. But either way, it doesn't matter. I sense that it's essentially more of a masculine force. But this, of course, is also true, I think, to some extent, to an overriding degree. So it's not a, because you could have different types of gods and they might all represent different things. This is a god of war. This is a god of power, of dominance. Just as some people are like this and others are more passive and they're more of the loving vein and the creative vein, etc. This is a god of destruction, not of creation, not for humans. It's a god of creation for itself, of course, but it uses the human creativity to help itself in its ultimate game of destruction. Because it's a bit like the old saying, a general or a leader in an army never wants peace because they don't exist in peace, because their abilities and their whole game and what they are good at is in war. They're in their element in war. They are like this video game Earth that we have. It's a video game, as I say, a World War III that has been going on, except that the game is not always obvious to some people. But, it's still a war game. And the Archon God matrix is a war game, if you want to look at it that way. This Earth is a war game. May not always look that way to a lot of people, but that's because the game is played at different levels on different people. The way the game is played for me personally is different to how it is played for someone else, because the Archon God and its minions focuses on individuals. Each individual, will be given a different idol, a different game, different circumstances, and the war game will be played in a different way for each person. If you are more of the Matrix and actually like the Matrix, then the game will be played a lot different. In fact, you may even decide to play for the Matrix. You may decide to change teams even, as I often watch the football and stuff in recent times, where they used to have teams where players would stay for a lifetime or for years, never change teams. In the world now, do you notice that even in your sports, which I had noticed recently, other people think it's okay, but because there's so much money in everything, I wouldn't be bothered. Like I say, I won't listen to the music now. But I also, I will not watch a lot of sports because there is no loyalty to the team anymore. Players change teams according to the money. Sure, they're still interesting to watch. They're great players and they're very skillful. But I think the whole purpose of following a team is that you follow certain players. That is the honour of it. I'm being too ideological now. I'm not even sporty, as you know, but I have noticed it in recent times that they change all the time. So, if you had a certain team, the very players that you were, idolising and following one year, the next year, they will be your enemy. They will be the other team that your team will be playing against. So that's the Matrix. That is the Matrix. See the confusion here? That's a mind confusion there. In other words, last year, my friends and my team that I followed and idolised and went and gave them my time and effort, that were my team, the next year they are on the other team. So they're not my team anymore. In fact, they're the opposing team, they're the enemy, you see. So it's, you've got to defeat them. So I thought that's the confusion even in our reality now, because the Matrix is more exposed. The Matrix is showing a certain amount of its reversal, I think. But people still don't notice it, even though to me it's quite clear because, yeah, if you're following a team, if I follow a team and then a year later when they're able to, they change teams and play for your, against you because, your team, they're playing against you. That's like saying, you had a friend and now it's become your enemy. And this is what happens in the Matrix too, because many people do go for the Matrix. So they end up playing for the Matrix. Although I would say personally that no human can play for the Matrix. Oh, you can play for the Matrix, but if you play for the Matrix, you're playing against yourself because the Matrix is it's a different species, so it's not interested. It doesn't. It's a lion doesn't like the deer. Even if the deer is friendly, even if the deer is a benefit, it's just that way. It's like, yeah, sure, that's not a good example. Sorry about that. But what I'm saying is that if you play for the Matrix, yes, you can get benefits and you can play for the Matrix, but ultimately you are playing against yourself in a way because the Matrix doesn't, you are a different species to the technological Matrix God, and the Matrix God is a god of war so if you want to, if you don't mind being a soldier and playing for the Matrix, that is what happens quite a bit. Yes, of course, if you follow me, but ultimately I wouldn't know, but I would think that there's no way that the scorpion is ever going to embrace or love the frog. But it will use the frog for a period of time, but it can never be the same species. And that species is anti-life, anti-human. It's not going to change that because it doesn't want to, because it's in its nature, just as human beings' nature is actually the opposite. So it tends to be easily, tends to believe and tends to not see the anti-life so much and also the human has logic, so it doesn't understand the mindset. It's a bit like most wars are fought for peace, but it doesn't understand that the generals and those that are benefiting from the war and actually enjoy the war and their abilities are at best, like if you're a master strategist in war, you're greatly admired and you're greatly appreciated and you're at your best. You're putting your abilities to your best. How can I explain that? I think there was there a fellow called Patton? There was a movie called Patton. Years ago I saw it. He was like a leader of some sort in the army, of the war. And he was only good while there was a war or while there was conflict. And this is like the Matrix. That is the game of this world. It is a game that is a battle all the time. But it's not a visible battle all the time, but that's what the game is. As a lot of video games are. There's always competition, there's always things being, and humans like to play them even in the little video games and things. And the only difference is that in this Earth level, it's a real game and it's a big Earth world game, as opposed to playing it on your TV when you play, and also it's safer on your TV. It's, in the world level, it's played at a real level. On the video game, if you get shot, you can pick yourself up and start all over again. And you probably don't feel any pain, whereas I'm not sure if you can pick yourself up or how many times you can pick yourself up in the real world, but you certainly feel the pain of getting hit by the bullet, etc., etc. And like I say, it's a game that is savoured by the Matrix, because it, for some reason, it plays it that way. It likes the game. It wants the game to keep going. And it wants, the God entity wants its representations to dominate the world, which they do, and therefore it is a representation of the God, even though the God itself, as I've said, is a lot, to me, I sense a lot more of a God of war. But its representations that we admire in this real earth world, they are not represented always as gods or goddesses of war. They often are represented of the other half of this God in a way, and other versions of the God, because humans would not worship all war gods, you see. They would find that, it's not for everyone, and it would be too much. But you still see, the reversal is still see, humans don't have all their abilities, and they're not complete. Like when I felt complete on the beach with Lulu, we don't have that. We don't have our completeness, I don't think. At least I don't think I do. And so therefore you don't have all your abilities. So therefore the best of us is drained for the Matrix, but that is still only of an emotional kind of negative, limited level. The Matrix doesn't want any power from a human being. The Matrix doesn't want, a human being that is anything except giving off negative emotional energy. That's because that is what feeds the Matrix. Because it's a war Matrix, you see. War doesn't feed off love. War feeds off aggressiveness, negativity. It doesn't feed off positivity. It might have a positive purpose for its ultimate aim, or it might say that, but it actually, you saw war, there's nothing during the process of a war or a battle that is pleasant or positive, even if the outcome or the reason for you being in that battle, you think it is going to be positive. And but that works for humans too, I would think. Like I don't see anything positive about this war battle myself, but at the same time, I can get angry, and if I was more powerful, I probably would desire to work against the negativity, not because I think that I'm working even towards the positivity. Like I say, a lot of what I see, even with the Matrix coming down and seeing it, it's more like, as I've said, I think I've said it before, it's not that I see any more than anyone else. It's just that I see the negativity, and the negativity is there for everyone to see. So I am not really against anything. I'm not even for anything. But when you see a lot of negativity, you almost go to the other side because you cannot stand the negativity. So for me, I don't really have views or opinions or religions or any of that sort of stuff. Never have, and don't want to. Always been a fence sitter, I've said this. But when you're on that fence, and it's a bit like the human race too, as I've said before, I'm fence sitter. But when you see a bit like animals, like I say, even crocodiles. I may not be keen on crocodiles, may not be keen on sharks, right? May have even had bad experiences with some animals. But when you see that whole species down to its last being, the last crocodile, you might say, oh, I don't really like crocodiles, but I don't want to see them be extinct. So you might just jump down off the fence. It's kind of like that for me anyway. It's more like that. It's not so much that you want to or that you have any views, but it's like it's gone so much out of balance that even if you didn't like something, you dislike the other so much more because it's annihilating species. You know what I mean? It's like I may not like every species that's on the earth, may prefer some animals to others. But because I am human, I don't want to see any species wiped out, even though they all have been actually, because there's most actually most things have become extinct. And it's a bit like that too. So, and humans are like that. They don't like to see that, but they don't realise that it's them that is the real goal of extinction. Animals have already become extinct. Many have that we're aware of even, and many more that we're not aware of, because you can't go back in time and realise how much has been wiped out, and you don't even know what really even still exists for that matter. But, like a lot of people will jump on the bandwagon of protesting and stuff like that very quick if they think there's only one koala left or one kangaroo left, even low when they hear about them being wiped out for positive purposes. They let it go. You know what I mean? And that's all I say is that, hey, it's a bit like all these things. You almost have to not be too logical or buy into the matrix. You can if you want to. I'm not saying you can't. You can if you want to. But, if you say you shouldn't kill something, then you say, oh yeah, well I don't think you should kill something, but I think it has to be eliminated now, or culled is the word they use, for practical purposes, because otherwise something else will be wiped out or we will be wiped out, etc. Well, yes, this is the truth. But if you kill, they'll be wiped out and so will you. This is how it works. It's a kind of, in my fantasy world, it's an insane world, an insane matrix, a mad matrix, a duality matrix where everything is the opposite. But there is also a kind of funny law of balance of nature where you don't realise it, but everything gets wiped out. And sometimes, we get it all wrong, that's all. But everything is becoming extinct. And we live in a dead world in a funny kind of way. I think that was a movie too where someone says, I see dead people. Well, essentially that's what you are, because we're not dealing, I don't think, anymore with individual human beings that are complete in themselves. We're dealing with a connected matrix of beings, a race of beings, a race of human beings even, if you like, that are technologically connected, spiritually connected in a technological way, if you want to look at it that way. And they think that is true humanity. They think that is true humanity. They think that is the real thing. They think that is the real picture. And they think the war game is okay. And they think it is spiritually a benefit. That's why I say even spirituality, religion, all these things, they can all be used in an apparently positive way. But in reality, it's all negative to the real human being. But that's just my way of looking at it, because spirituality and human beings don't mix. Human beings and nature do mix. Human beings in technology don't mix. They can mix, but they will not be successful. Not for the human being. They are for the matrix. They are for the matrix God. But we have mixed. It's like breeding with different species. It's like this whole mentality we have that it is okay, that we are all one, and that we are all, it's okay to love all. And this is actually true. That is the funny thing about it. It is that is the paradox of the matrix. All these sayings, all these things, they are true. But the matrix uses them in a way that is not a benefit. Because the scorpion does not really want to be one with the frog. The scorpion will sting the frog. Because the scorpion is like a drug addict. It needs its fix. It needs its sustenance. And it can only do that by stinging the frog. You see, in this fairy tale, you know, the frog can say, oh yes, I should love everything. And yes, I would like to be friends with the scorpion. That sounds very good. The frog doesn't realise that the scorpion has no intentions of ever being friends with the frog. The scorpion's only intention ever, and can only ever be, to sting the frog. Because it is, as he tells the frog after he stings him, I can't help it, I'm a scorpion. I am what I am. It is in my nature, just as it is in your nature, to be kindly, trusting and positive. But that is your weakness in a scorpion world. Because you are not in a totally frog world. You might wish you were, and you might wish that you could change the scorpion. And you might say, can we coexist? Can we not get along, as they say in things? Yes, the frog can get along. But if it gets along with the scorpion will, in the long run, and its ultimate aim will always be, because it cannot help it, to sting the frog. Will not ever change. Does not want to change, cannot change, does not care to change. It expects the frog to bend to it, not the other way round. And even if the frog does bend to it at its own expense, it will ultimately still be stung, because that is the goal of the scorpion and the scorpion Archon matrix. That is the game. That is what the game is played for. You know, you have goodies and baddies in a game. You have your cowboys and Indians. You know, you can't play a war game unless you've got two sides. When two sides go to war, when two tribes go to war, I think that's a song. I don't know where all these things come to me now. I'm living in delusion fantasy land, as you can see, with all these things. But you know, the only confusing thing for the frog is that it doesn't know that there are two tribes at war. It doesn't know it's a tribe. It doesn't know it's playing in a matrix, scorpion, Archon, matrix, negative, destructive game. You know, some people do. We have been conditioned to enjoy the competitiveness too. like I say, even when you play a sport, that is an Archon sport. Just as when you listen to a piece of music, it is Archon music. It is made by the Archon god, given to its demigods for your enjoyment, for your benefit, for your pleasure, for your enlightenment. But ultimately for your well, I leave that to you to make it, because, you know, like I say, if you fall in love with you know, a beautiful seductive siren that is what's that word, a femme fatale, like in my old film noir movies. And the Matrix will use that too, because the Matrix will use anything interesting that a human being thinks, because the Archon god and its minions do not think interesting. They don't think at all that way. They get every single bit of anything that is remotely interesting, remotely creative, remotely, you know, like they don't stop and smell the roses. They don't have any interest in the roses. But if they see a human smell the roses, they're like, oh, wow, we better smell the roses. What's that? That's interesting. We'll go and smell the roses. We'll pick up the roses. They don't think that way. They don't feel that way. It's not, they're fascinated by something that they're not. They're fascinated and repulsed at the same time, and envious at the same time too, because they need to do that in order to keep the Matrix going. But it's a chore for them, because to be a scorpion, then to have to present yourself as a frog, is difficult. It takes a lot of effort, but they're quite happy to do that because they like the game. And it gives them great satisfaction to know that they have elevated themselves then to the gods. They are the gods then. The scorpion is the god, the frog that originally, you know, has all the good points, is then relegated to very little. I didn't put that very well, but it's kind of like, there again, like I say, the song is good, but the singer is poor. But the Matrix gods and its disciples and its idols that I also have admired and followed and worshipped for a lifetime, they are very good singers because they specialise. You know, they don't, whereas a single human being has to incorporate everything into their one being. And they are complete if they were not limited and more aware and had all their abilities. But the Archon god idol singers, for instance, in the real world, I mean, you know, they are specialists. They get the best of all. So they are very good singers. If they were making this video, they would have the same song that I've got, the same idea, the same input, but they would put it much better, you know, and probably some of them do, if you follow me, you know, because in the reverse world, you don't, the better singers are of the Matrix. But then again, I'm not of the Matrix, so I don't have my song all written out for me on a teleprompter in front of me, or relayed into my head through headphones. This is at a very little technological level. The technology in the Matrix is much, much more advanced than this. So if they can read my mind, they can certainly send the thoughts into another, a Lulu Archon doll, shall we say. Lulu had blonde hair and blue eyes, and was, everything that I thought was very nice in a physical level, This was when I was a child, of course, Whereas, like, even myself, I'm looking at myself here now in the thing, but, like, obviously now at this late stage in my life, and having been Archon controlled and manipulated and put through the ringer by the Matrix, particularly in recent times, I haven't got time to feel healthy and natural and present myself how I would now even feel. And of course, after a lifetime of living in the Matrix, like everyone else, I would not feel particularly like Lulu, a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed cutesy pie, But what I'm trying to say is that originally these might have been my representations, whereas now, what you even represent yourself even in this physical body could be a totally different representation of what your actual real essence is, because your essence has been changed and manipulated so much at a mind and psychological level, and then that becomes represented by your vehicle, which is your body. The Archon god idols or disciples of this Matrix that rule this world and that impress us all so much, they are the very best at a physical and every level of what humans are, but they are not natural. They are contrived. Their thought goes into their manufacturing, shall we say, just as there is thought that goes into each person's image. They don't just accidentally wear certain clothes or accidentally wear certain makeup or accidentally have certain hair or accidentally. It's all a combined contrivance, a combined image, which most, even artists, would openly probably admit. Some might not. They might. That would depend on their image too. Like some try to present a more so-called authentic image or a more natural image, that they're less conventional, etc., etc., etc. But it's all thought out, because these are the gods, and these are here to to get you to worship them. So naturally, they have to present different images depending on, like I say, I picked up the Lulu doll off the table. But, many other children would have not wanted Lulu at all, that doll. It would not have appealed to them. Each person will pick up their own idol or their own doll that represents them, that appeals to them, according to how the Matrix has directed their mind over a life. And some of us might have hung on to some of our own ideas as well, so therefore they might be less of the Matrix. But still, I would say that it would be impossible for anyone to have not been in the Matrix, which is why I'm sitting here now, and I'm pretty sure that when I was younger, much younger, and even as a child, that I would have been sitting here representing myself as I am now, because it's probably not a representation of what I am. And of course, because I am a product of the Matrix, I'm not fully aware of what I really am anyway. And I don't even have a proper image. I'm not even fully aware of it. And the only reason I know the Matrix exists because I now say, hey, I thought I knew what I was, but I now say, how? Now I really don't know at all. But in saying that, I'm like saying, I don't know any of it. I don't know really what I was meant to be. I only know that what I am is a product of the Matrix, and that it probably has changed. If I can remember back to when I was on the beach with the Lulu doll and felt that complete moment, that completeness in that moment, a complete acceptance and oneness with myself and with nature too. But it wouldn't have mattered probably where I was. It could have helped, but it wasn't. But it was, you know, even low. I might have seen others that I might have still admired too, but I didn't compare myself with that at that stage. Not much anyway, but very soon after, it's a gradual process from when you're born. Even your friends, you'll compare them. You will notice if one's got the blonde hair and you don't, etc. If that is your deal, if that's what you have been conditioned to think is good. But really, each person should be very content with what they are, knowing that they're a unique human being and that the world revolves around them. So whatever they are is the ultimate special. There's nothing they can take from the Matrix that will make them better, because they already were complete from the day they were born. It's the Matrix that makes people feel incomplete, less, confused about themselves, confused about the environment, confused about their body, not accepting, comparing, instead of saying, hey, it doesn't matter what everything or anything else is. You are the be and end all. That's the real reality. But it's not a reality that we're shown. It's not one that we believe in. It's not one that we've ever. And even now, I'm saying all this, but my reality hits me in the face and tells me the complete opposite. Says, hey, you think you're a complete human being. You think look at you. Look at how much sickness, how much injury, how much pain, how much ugliness is presented to you. Look at what you have become. Look at what you are. How can you say this? There's a physical contradiction there, and that is the truth. But that is because I'm in the Matrix, and because the Matrix is a different thing to a human being. And the Matrix is anti-life, anti-human. So therefore, of course, but at the same time, it really means that the human will always be will be stunted in their growth, stunted in acceptance of themselves, stunted, and because we are in a video game, and the God entity is a God of war, essentially, but it does have other elements, of course. But essentially, that is the name of the game. I think that's a movie too. It's certainly a good time. That is essentially the name of the game, though. It played at different levels and played with master actors. Most are actors. Just as we love our actors, we think our actors are more authentic than us. We think our actors are more human than us because they play in these roles and they act. But that is what they are. They're actors. They're actors through and through. They're actors right through to their very core. There's nothing authentic about them at all. The only things that are authentic about actors is what they mimic, copy, incorporate into themselves from a real human being. That's what acting is. And that is what the world is largely full of. As Shakespeare said, I think, I've heard this quote. I've picked up a lot of quotes over the last 12 months now that I've looked into all these things. I've heard them, of course, over a lifetime, some of them, but now I really use them. The world is a stage and everyone's an actor. Well, actually, I disagree with that. He was an actor, yes, because he was of the Matrix. But We had to be because the Matrix only has its own as prominent actors. But no, there are a few human beings amongst it too. But the gods are the actors. You know, we worship actors and we relegate them to the heights and of gods. We put them on a pedestal. We elevate them to the level of a god. We elevate actors to the level of a god. We make gods out of actors. We make false idols, I suppose you could say. All our idols are false because they're actor idols. We know it in a way, but like Lulu doll. Lulu was an Archon doll, a piece of plastic, but I elevated her by my thinking and my way of looking at her into a spirit Archon doll. That was my fantasy, and we live in a fantasy world of illusion on the big earth level. Just as children, it's okay, but you should gradually sort of grow out of it a bit. But how can you grow out of it when you are in an Archon Matrix fantasy mind game, video game, earth world? You see, so you that's why I say you may as well stay in your fantasies like I do. You may as well hang on to your fairy tales. You may as well have your fantasy friends because they're probably better than the friends or the idols or the gods or the actors that you worship in the real Matrix earth world. Because at least if it's a fantasy of your own making, it keeps you complete. Whereas the other way, you're giving your completeness and breaking it up almost and giving it to the Matrix consciousness, the Matrix God and its minions, which is the Matrix spiritual consciousness, technological consciousness of this earth. I don't know where that come from. You know, I've never even used the word consciousness before, but I have heard about some sort of, it's like a universal consciousness. I do not believe in universal consciousness. No, I don't at all. Not at all. Even though I say humans are all connected. No, I believe a human being in themselves as an individual is 100% complete if they were not in the Matrix and if the Matrix did not infiltrate them. And they shouldn't need Lulu, an Archon doll. Poor Lulu. I shall still try to bring her back into being with my thought creating reality. Maybe some of you could help and combine with your thought and bring... The only trouble is you don't know what Lulu looked like. But I would just like to do that, only to prove to myself that we still have some ability to create the thinking with the reality. Look, I already know this because I see it, but it is small. But I said this before and I'll say it again, and I shall say it till my last breath, which may not be long off. But that's narcissistic too, because you see, that's attention getting. Whereas, like a narcissist would probably say, or a psychopath would say, well, you just want the attention. Well, look, it's not really that case at all. And it shouldn't be that way. That is the Matrix. That is the Matrix God. Everything attention, everything worship, everything idolizing, everything about manipulating, controlling, playing the game, must play the game. You can't be an individual, isolated human being that just wants to keep to yourself, mind your own business, not interested in anything else. That is not how the Matrix works. It is a combined effort of minions and minions and minions. When I say minions and minions, I'm talking about millions and millions and millions combining as a one entity to play the game against the one human being that is a complete entity, or should be, but is not now and does not know they are, and is seduced into thinking that that is not desirable and that it is not possible. And of course it is hard. It is definitely very hard, and it makes this matrix world a very difficult and unpleasant place to live in. In fact, to die in, really, because you are dying daily in it. And the Archon god and its minions, they are already dead, but they are getting life from the human. So the human's life is drained from them and giving life to what is essentially dead beings at a spiritual level. I'm talking about at a spiritual level only, because at a physical level, that's a different matter. At a technical level, that's a different matter. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's time for me to fold up. You know, I sort of have an idea in my head, and then I grab that ball and run with it, and I end up going all over the place and making not only no sense, but exaggerating everything, shall we say. But hey, it's, you know, I make the video, and if it's a fantasy, I'm allowed to exaggerate. Fairy tales are like dreams. You can do anything in a dream. It doesn't have to be real. It doesn't have to fit guidelines. It doesn't have to fit the matrix, because it's a fantasy. It's a fairy tale, and it's my delusion, illusion, whatever you want. Each person is really living in an illusion anyway, because we only see the world through our own eyes. Everyone knows that. You know, we try to see it through others' eyes. The Matrix God and its minions sees things through humans' eyes, because otherwise it can't stay a God. Even though it is its matrix and its earth, because the human is the cog and the centre of it. Human beings are a necessary evil for the Matrix God and its minions. A necessary evil. They see the human being as anti-them, which is anti-technology, anti-their way of being. Whereas evil to us, or to me, is anti-life, anti-human. You know, because to me, human is life. Anything else is not. And actually, that is the truth if you are a human. But if you're not a human, you have a different truth, you see. So this is what I'm trying to say. So I'm trying to see both sides here. But in seeing both sides, remember, the frog should not see the scorpion side too much. The frog might even be sympathetic to the scorpion and say, well, I understand that you can't help but sting me, but you are still going to sting me. So I understand it, and I might even understand why you have become a scorpion. I might even empathise, because I'm a human and a frog. Yes, I will empathise, which is my downfall, my weakness, as far as you're concerned. It's not a weakness, it's a strength for the human, because they create with all that. The scorpion doesn't create, the scorpion stings, he destroys. It destroys. You see, that's how it is. That's the Matrix, that's the scorpions, that's the Archon spirit Lulu doll. And there I have mashed it all in together just to be like the Matrix and throw it out there to confuse. But I have a feeling, and I'm pretty much, I know, that the limited people that listen to me know more, so they can make much more of it. But if I was saying this to even another human being that does not think the Matrix exists, this is the only reason I originally made the videos, was that, and there again, I don't even know this for a fact, because I don't know how many real humans want to still be real humans, or whether they prefer to be more of the Matrix and be the more duality type humans, the more like the duality God. See, it's all a choice too. And I don't know how many are given a choice. I don't know how many are aware of the choice. I don't know how many are just like myself, like most of my life, where you're just plain confused and think that you either don't care or think that if you can just keep away from it, you'll be right, and that you really just think that, oh, well, there's chaos everywhere, but I'm just going to try to survive and make the best of it. And I don't know how many people there are of this, because that's how I was, and I assume that there's people like that. And, so they are not really the actors or the disciples or the gods or the demigods of the Matrix. They are not, but they are caught up in the Matrix. Most of them are playing for the Matrix. They have been enticed to like the video game. And what can you say about that? They may not be scorpions, but they will end up stinging. So it's kind of, that sounded, not sure what I'm talking about here. It's time for me to go, because I have been here for a long time and making no sense whatsoever. And like I say, definitely the song, I like to think that my song is good, but my lyrics are poor and I'm a poor singer. But hey, I'm in the Matrix and I'm a human being, so of course that is going to be the case. So I better go and turn on some music of the Matrix with some real gods to listen to and to admire and to worship and idolize. That's the Matrix, because they are the better singers. I might have the essence of a song in me, but I'm never going to be able to piece it together and produce it and project it in the appropriate or the most enticing, attractive, seductive manner that the Matrix gods can do. And that's the Matrix. Okay. Good day.